And Paul Johnson, Thomas? Johnson or Thomas?
Paul Johnson. Yeah, maybe we should remove that since it's okay.
Good afternoon. Today is Thursday, July 20th, 2023. It's 4:30 PM. This is the Cable Communication Advisory Board. Starting off with a roll call, we do have a quorum. Our second is we have a new member. Paula Humbard was appointed to fill an unexpired term. So Paula, welcome.
Thank
We're
you.
glad you're here. We're going to change the agenda just a little bit because we have our attorney online, Mr. Scott.
Or do we want to do just approve the minutes first, or?
We can do the minutes if we
Okay.
want. All right, let's look at item 3.1, the minutes from our meeting on, says July 20th, that's not
It
right.
says held April 20th.
April 20th.
Yep.
So I would entertain a motion to approve our minutes from April 20th.
I can make the motion to approve the minutes.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
I second that.
We have a motion and a second to approve our minutes from April 20th. Any corrections or changes?
Looks good.
Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right. Now we'll move down to number 5 and move Mr. Scott. Good afternoon. How are you?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. Thank you for the invitation. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you fine.
Great. Thank you.
Again, just to bring everybody up to speed, we have a contract with Comcast. It was a 7-year contract. Does that sound right?
10-year.
10-year contract. And in that contract, there was a provision in there that said that Comcast would keep an open office in our city. And as we all know, that did not happen. They closed that office. And our former city attorney was looking into this as a possible actionable item. And there was lots of complaints about service at the time. And then, of course, his position ended. And we got a new city attorney, and we wanted to get him up to speed. So that's kind of where we sit at today. Am I missing anything, Mr. Sherman, that more to that before we have Mr. Scott bring us up to speed?
Yeah, I mean, we had a few people come in and tell us some of the issues that they were having regarding customer complaints outside of just the location of the building in town. They are having issues getting a hold of someone. So those are some of the issues that we were also looking into.
A lot of frustration. So with that, Mr. Scott, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. So I prepared a memorandum for the committee's review before today's meeting. I hope everyone had a chance to review it. I'm certainly happy to take any questions about it. I will hit a few of the high points. Obviously, I was asked to review the reported complaints that this committee received previously, and the date of the meeting I reviewed was November 3rd, 2021. I've tried to summarize the types of complaints that I understand this committee, city council members, city staff had been fielding at that time, and some bullet points here. Generally, customer service oriented. A big complaint, obviously, being, as the chair mentioned, that that Comcast closed its local store within the city of New Ulm in 2020. But also complaints that I'm sure won't sound unfamiliar to you. What I would just ask of this committee during your discussion today would be to examine whether the summary I've provided remains, to the best of your knowledge, accurate. Because obviously this was somewhat dated information. It's certainly possible that either the quantity, frequency, or nature of the complaints that you've received might have changed in the intervening time period. It's also possible that Comcast may, to your knowledge, have made some changes to its resources, to its customer service practices and facilities that are available to your community. With that in mind, the question obviously then turns to, what did the city agree to with Comcast in the franchise agreement? As the chair mentioned, it's a 10-year agreement. It's agreed to, so it's a contract between the city and Comcast. It's also enacted by ordinance, so it has the effect of local regulations. And I've tried to outline the requirements in the memorandum. They're found in subdivision 4, at least the requirements relating to the customer service complaints that the city had been receiving from Comcast customers. The starting point, I think, for the analysis should be the language regarding the local office. There's a paragraph in the franchise agreement, franchise ordinance, specifically titled local office. And the first sentence of that paragraph is itself unambiguous. It uses mandatory language to require that Comcast maintain a convenient local customer service and bill payment location for matters such as receiving subscriber payments, handling billing questions, equipment replacing, etc. That doesn't necessarily require, and again, we're just focusing on that one sentence. It does not necessarily require that such an office be located within the city limits of the city of New Ulm. And there's obviously going to be some subjectivity in what a convenient local customer service and bill payment location might be. How far away is still convenient and local. But I think the larger issue for the city in examining the parties' rights under this clause would be the remainder of this section D. So while the first sentence uses mandatory language to require essentially a local office be maintained, the remainder of the paragraph talks about requirements that kick in the event Comcast does not maintain such an office. And there are some specific requirements, such as providing for equipment, replacement of malfunctioning equipment by, the language in the contract is truck roll or other alternative arrangement and grantee's discretion. Comcast, again, this is all in the event they do not maintain a local office. It says it shall maintain a drop box within the city of New Ulm for receiving subscriber payments. My understanding from staff is that they are meeting that requirement. There's also a requirement that Comcast shall make equipment changes and exchanges available via mail order or similar service made available to all subscribers. I think some of the complaints that were presented to the committee previously indicated that either isn't an option or at least it was difficult to navigate. So I think what we're looking at with this local office requirement is the result of what I understand to be, and would not be surprised to have been, very contentious or at least difficult and drawn out negotiations. Clearly, the parties representing the city wanted there to be a local presence and a convenient option for local customer service for Comcast customers. And I would suspect some of the latter language that seems to cut against the idea that that was a mandatory requirement was negotiated by Comcast through this process. So it's to be clear, this is not a error that someone committed drafting this agreement. These are just hard agreements to negotiate, and this is a result of what I have to assume was some very extensive negotiated language. So that's the local office issue. I think the verdict, from my perspective in interpreting this language, is that there is a non-mandatory preference, I would say, is kind of the effect that Comcast maintain a local office, but there are at least minimum standards defined in the event Comcast chose not to do so, which, again, I understand is the case now. There are other customer service requirements, standards in this franchise agreement, apart from the location of a local office that Comcast is required to meet. They're required to promptly respond to all requests for service, repair, installation, and information from subscribers. They're required to comply with the FCC standards for customer service, and I've attached the most recent version of those standards that I could find as an appendix to this memorandum. So I think the role of this committee, you're obviously advisory. I've presented some options that the city has at this point. in as framed for this committee, this would be options that you have the power to recommend the city council pursue. But we've set out certain options towards the end of this memorandum that I think are kind of up to the committee to determine which to recommend the council pursue. One would just be to take no action.
This is on
basically
page
say-
6, correct?
Page 6 of the memorandum. Thank you. One would be just not take any action. Hear the complaints, and maybe you will determine that there's no obvious breach of the standards in the franchise agreement. If you think that maybe you're not sure about that, you could certainly try and conduct further investigation, solicit feedback from customers of Comcast, try and do some analysis if the complaints have been documented on the nature and frequency of those complaints, as I mentioned. So, looking into this further is certainly an option that this committee could pursue or recommend be pursued.
Mr. Scott, on that particular one, I think I remember our former city attorney saying we could actually hold a public hearing regarding concerns with Comcast. Is that what you would advise as well?
That's certainly an option. At some point, I mean, if you're interested in hearing from Comcast customers, that is a tool available. It's not a specific requirement that it be done that I can find, but it's certainly a valid method for the city to determine what the nature of the service provided by Comcast is at this stage.
Yeah, and that would require the council to agree to that as well, but, okay, thank you.
So getting into, I guess, more serious options, or at least consequential options for the available to the city, available to this committee to potentially recommend. If you've evaluated and have a sense of the nature of the complaints from Comcast customers, and you think there may be an issue with this agreement, but you're not sure, or you want to raise it with Comcast and raise attention of the issues without necessarily instituting or initiating any formal contractual procedure to declare a breach or take steps down the road toward even potentially seeking termination of this franchise agreement, you could certainly put your concerns in writing and ask for Comcast to offer an explanation to the city of how it feels it's meeting its obligations under the franchise agreement. And then ultimately option number 4 would be the most consequential, and that would be to actually invoke the breach procedure and breach provisions in the franchise agreement, send a written notice to Comcast stating the grounds on which the city believes Comcast has breached its obligations under the franchise agreement. There is a specific procedure that would follow such a notice, and it is extensive. It requires multiple notices, multiple opportunities for Comcast to either dispute that a breach has occurred, or if a breach has occurred, time to come into compliance. It offers multiple avenues for Comcast to challenge the city's determination or declaration of breach in court or before a state agency. Ultimately, it would culminate in a public hearing before the city council. The city council would then need to make the decision, but that's it's an extensive process. There would be multiple opportunities for Comcast to participate and object and seek court review of that determination should the city ultimately make that determination. I think with that in mind, I would be happy to take any questions that this committee has about any of the analysis in the memorandum or my summary today. I know it's an important issue for the community. I appreciate your patience as I did get up to speed and work through some other issues to get this to you and could take a look at it. But with that, I think that's those are the 4 options I think the committee is able to recommend be pursued at this stage, in addition to maybe some procedural interim steps suggested by the chair as well.
Mr. Scott, are you, I know you represent a number of cities. Are you dealing with this with any of your other entities?
Mr. Chair, I have not had a recent complaint from, or at least not that I've worked on for a city specifically related to Comcast. Some years ago, I did look at a very similar issue with a smaller provider in a different city. In that case, there is I'd say, a stronger and unambiguous requirement that the provider maintain a local office within that city, inside city limits. And I'm sure for similar circumstances, the provider was unable to keep it open or claimed that it was financially unviable to keep it open, and they closed it. That city did pursue it. I think they sent a letter to the provider, and the response they got back was, "We would just like you to amend the franchise agreement to remove that requirement." Ultimately, of course, what happens, or what the implications, let's just say the city hypothetically determined that there was a breach, initiated the procedure, went through it, and got to the stage where the city would terminate the franchise agreement. The consequence of that obviously is that Comcast leaves the city and stops providing services to the community. So I think that's always a challenge. Is that ultimately a positive outcome? And that's something you'll have a much better sense of than I will, about if there's other alternative providers that would step in and offer equivalent service. So that is, don't lose sight, I guess, of the implications of seeking a formal contractual termination in this case.
Sure. Advisory board members, thoughts, comments, questions?
Aside from the first sentence in that subdivision 4, section D, there's a lot of outs and a lot of generalness in there that would be very, I think, very difficult to hold their feet to a fire on. That's just reading it. That's my take on that.
Mr. Scott, I do have a question in here, and it's awfully vague. That subdivision is, but where it says here, in the alternative, grantee shall maintain a Dropbox, and goes through that, and it says that subscribers, where is that said, make equipment changes and exchanges available via mail order or similar service made available to all subscribers. So, and replacement will be exchanged and replaced by truck roll or alternative arrangement in grantee's discretion. I do know, because I am a Comcast subscriber, that their discretion is there's a fee. There's a shipping fee to have it equipment sent to you, and then there is a setup fee to have somebody come and set it up because it was shipped to you. And if you want to mail it back, there is a shipping fee to mail it back and a restocking fee when it gets there. So is that how is that their discretion? Is that what that means, an arrangement in grantee's discretion?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, that's tough. It's a favorable language for Comcast on that point. Whether that is so favorable that they're able to impose those charges legally in compliance with their franchise agreement is another question. Make available, it doesn't say, the language does not say make available at no charge. So I think it's, I think lawyers could go back and forth many times on what exactly that means, what the exact objective standard would be from that language, and whether Comcast is meeting it or not with the types of services and attendant fees that you mentioned.
Right.
I know that's not a conclusive answer to your question, and I apologize, but it's also
Right.
tough to give a conclusive answer when you have very carefully negotiated language and kind of favorable to the franchisee.
There's a lot of outs in this language. It's very vague.
Carly, did you have something you wanted to add for that? Or it looked like you have your hand raised thing there. No? Okay.
Hi, yes. No, I was just hoping to get a minute. Carly Warner, I work at Comcast in the Government Affairs Group, and I was one of the teammates that negotiated this contract And just to step back, one thing that I think is missing from this conversation right now is the efforts that we have taken in the conversations and work we have done with the city prior to closing the store and after closing the store, and certainly after hearing some of the pain points that our customers were raising with the city. We've worked closely with the city manager. We have sent a letter to all of our customers that was carefully negotiated with the city manager, and I hope you've seen it. I'm not sure I saw it in the packet, as a result of some of the conversations that we've had since that last meeting, certainly a couple of years ago that you reviewed, Mr. Scott. But what we have worked with the city on is that there is no fee to send back equipment, and so I'd love to dig deeper about where you saw that shipping fee. What there is
bill.
what the customer. Well, yeah, and I'd love to see what the circumstances were around that, because how it works is you should be able to go online and in your account, return the equipment, and then a prepaid UPS shipping label is available to you. Or you can go into City Hall if you don't have a printer and don't have access
Right.
to that, which we understand a lot of customers don't.
Mhm.
We've worked out with City Hall. You can go into City Hall and bring your equipment, and they have prepaid
Oh,
packing. They have a whole stack we sent them of
okay.
prepaid
Do
shipping
people know
labels.
that though? So how do people
We've
know
sent-
that?
Yeah, we've sent a number of letters out, and then we have this flyer that has this information that I'm happy to send around to the commission. No one, I apologize that this communication somewhere got messed up. But certainly Chris Dalton has this information. We've hung it in front of where the old store used to be. And so customers, if they're going to the store with the intent of returning equipment or swapping some out, they will see this and it'll walk through the steps that you can take. Obviously the volume that the store was doing, the store overall certainly was a very part-time store and was not taking in much volume at all. The majority of what they would see is payments. And so I hope we've worked with Hy-Vee there in New Ulm, and customers can pay their bill face to face if that's how they prefer to do it. At Hy-Vee, they take checks, cash even. As it wouldn't surprise you, the vast majority of our customers pay online, or have auto pay. But understanding a lot of customers have not moved that way. And so Hy-Vee is our payment center now. And so I guess we can quibble if that's more or less convenient than where the store location was, but rest assured, there is a place in the city boundaries of New Ulm where customers can make payments. And that is on the customer's bill. And I'll send this flyer because this is what we've sent around to customers a couple times, and we have it posted in front of the store. Of course, any UPS store. And I know that was the contention before we worked out that deal with, or the relationship with the City Hall and provided them with a stack of prepaid labels for UPS for equipment. That was a pain point, and completely acknowledge that the closest UPS store was in Mankato, and understand that is certainly not convenient for a lot of our customers in New Ulm. And so that's when we worked with City Hall to get another place within the boundaries of New Ulm where customers could drop off equipment at no charge. And then, as Mr. Scott noted, when we were negotiating this franchise, I was very, very open that it was a store in New Ulm. It's a very part-time store. It was managed and manned by a wonderful employee who retired, and that was
One retired, one didn't
Yeah,
retire.
one did not retire.
Only one retired.
Yeah. Okay. And then of course, COVID happened and all those kind of things fell apart. But we were very honest that if it became financially unviable to keep the store open based on the amount of customers that we were actually servicing in the store, and of course we're no different than any other company or retail environment where, we keep very close data on those types of things, and that we could conveniently offer the things that were happening in the store, bill payment, equipment returns and swap outs in another manner, that we would be allowed to do that. And as Mr. Scott read that provision in the franchise, that is what we negotiated. And we were always very upfront about that. And we are under a lot of competition in the city. So we are very understanding that we need to meet our customers where we are. And we will continue to take more feedback about if there are other ways you think we can get this information out better, or there's another UPS location that we're missing, within the city. We're very open to that feedback.
Well, Carly, I'm really glad you're here, so thanks for coming in here tonight. Mr. Dalton is at the podium, our city manager, and got a comment?
No, actually, I was thinking Carly, everything she said is absolutely correct. Working with us, and I would say on multiple occasions, we've had to reorder labels and boxes because people do know that it is a drop location. I think we've, probably 2 or 3 times. I mean, it's not a frequent thing, but we have enough. They do, customers do come to return their stuff here, and we usually have them go down to Fuel Graphics to drop it off because they're a UPS drop location. So, and then, just for customer awareness on there, and when they get their equipment, if they look in their box, there is a return label sometimes in the box automatically, so you can send that back as well. But yeah, I know it's gone to the customers a couple times because I've gotten those notices in my bill, that New Ulm has that drop location in there as well.
Carly, one of the biggest concerns when this came up almost 2 years ago now, when it first started, came to our attention. And at that time, our previous city attorney was pretty upset with Comcast for closing their office. But most of it had to do with lack of service, that you couldn't get a hold of anybody. You'd call the number and you'd be put on hold for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, and then get sent to a blue space and boom, you'd lose the call. And that's what we were hearing from so many customers. Can you talk about that? Is that improved? Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate that feedback as well. That is the automatic phone tree routing system. When it works great, when you just want to talk to somebody quickly who knows everything about repair, and you've got something going on your internet service that you can't get fixed, and you can find someone to repair right away, or you've got a billing question, you just want to talk to somebody who's very well versed in billing. It works great, right? But I understand that if you want to talk to somebody and you have a question that doesn't fit into one of those, the most common categories, we call it, for people calling in, you feel like you get lost in a black hole. And I appreciate that feedback. And so what we did, since you are such a unique market in the sense that you are not, conveniently located to the metro, where our agents can say, well, pop into a store here or there, just the way our footprint is. And we've worked out these very unique circumstances with the city, as Mr. Dalton noted, that we put in our flyer, we have worked into our digital phone tree. If a customer says, speak to a representative right away, it will go to a representative that will note that it's a New Ulm area code or account number, and will have access to this flyer that I keep saying, and I'll happily send that around, that has these very special directions for New Ulm customers. So to say, speak to a representative, and you'll get right there.
So you're saying that issue is much better than it was, or for those people that know that little trick, are getting a better service than those that probably aren't aware. So it looks like we do have an education issue here that we need to work on a little bit somehow. Where are you located out of again, Carly?
I am in the West Metro,
You're in the
Minnetonka.
West. So where's our closest office store that's open. I thought I heard Montevideo once. Is that true? Do they have an open store over there?
No, we don't serve on a video.
Okay.
I think,
I assume you're closest to the South Metro.
yeah, I
Yep,
think it's
probably.
Minnetonka, about 62
Minnetonka?
miles. Yeah, somewhere around there.
Maybe.
I think that's the closest Xfinity store that's open.
Other questions, comments?
No, I agree with your comment
And
on
you
the
know, I think we've
education.
opened a couple more. I'll get the list to you. There's some in the South Metro.
Okay.
I think maybe a Shakopee. Would that be closer?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Shakopee
Yeah,
would
that's
be-
close.
That'd
Yeah,
be closer.
I mean, that's not bad. Okay. Because I think a lot of us, I mean, I used to, and of course, you're spoiled when you grow up in a smaller community. I would walk into the Comcast office and, what's new? Well, we got Disney free for 6 months. You want to sign up? Or we have a new machine, or how old is your receiver, or whatever you call it? Oh, let's get them switched out. And, you just don't get that service anymore, which I think a lot of local people really miss. But the number one issue is complaints when people call and they have questions, and that, and I can't tell you where that's at currently, but I know it was a crazy level of frustration, 2 years ago. Where is it at now? I know I still hear complaints about it, and people are mad the office is closed, and they can't just go down and solve their issue like they used to. And it is part of the contract that office is supposed to be open. So it comes back to, what do we do about that? And we're an advisory board. We're not the decision makers here, but we can certainly advise the city council on what we think their next steps should be. And that's what we hopefully will figure out yet tonight, unless we want more information. Anything else you want to fill us in on, Carly?
No, just that. I appreciate the lines of communication being open with the city. It's been really great to work with Mr. Dalton on getting some fixes immediately in place. And I'm glad to hear maybe you haven't been hearing as much of the complaints that this has been working. And like I said, open to feedback about more ideas on how to make it as convenient as possible.
I have one
for
idea.
customers
What if
down-
we, what
Okay.
if we get your phone number and get past that out every time somebody's no, never mind. Just a
Terrible
thought.
I'm terrible at explaining rebooting and all those kinds of things. Okay. Or how to check if a squirrel ate your wire. But and then of course, Larry Hildebrandt, of course he retired as well. So I know it's been a lot of change in a short period in your market, and I appreciate the growing pains on that. And like I said, open to feedback. I will just say I would hope that what we can do is continue talking about the fixes we do need to make, more communication, how we can get more communication out there, and having that conversation instead of if the contract requires us to have a store or not, because of course we have a different view, having negotiated it and being honest with the city attorney at the time when we were negotiating, that it may not stay open for 10 years. And then of course, so then we detail down what we would have to do in the case that we closed it. And that's very clear in the contract. And without getting legal, certainly one wouldn't agree to all the things that you'd have to do if you closed a store, of
Right.
course,
How much time do we have on our contract?
So 27, it looks like.
10 years.
I know, but when does it expire?
I think it's 2027.
Yeah, 27.
Oh, yeah, 27. I remember that from before. Okay. So there is still a few years left on this contract. And you probably heard me earlier say that one of the things the previous city attorney talked about was a public hearing. And, part of me said, yeah, maybe we should do that. And the other part is like, I don't want to throw a lot of bad press on Comcast. So I'm not sure where to go with that either. Another option could be just to kick this to the city council. We have work sessions that happen after our council meetings where we can't vote on anything, but we can discuss items like this to see where they might want to go. But I still think it's kind of our job as this group to recommend something to them so they have at least, what do you guys think? You've been working on this for a couple of years. What do you think? So any thoughts? Seth being the old timer on the
No, I think there's a piece that we should maybe recommend in it, and you mentioned it, Leslie, a little bit, from an education standpoint, and maybe that's snippet in the paper or social media. Just the reminder that this is available down, at City Hall. Some of these services are.
I do have a question. I'm going to go back to Mr. Scott for a minute. Item number 2, you said conduct a further investigation before raising any issues with Comcast. Is that kind of what a public hearing would be, or do you, what else are you thinking for number 2?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I think a public hearing is an option. It's one tool. Another tool would be, I don't know to the extent the city has, documented the complaints that have been received, whether through this committee or city staff or potentially directly to city council members. If there is such documentation that could be reviewed, analyzed to see, again, if there's any trends to be detected, from certainly from the time you reviewed this in 2021 to the present. It sounds like that may actually be the case, but obviously, that's just based on hearing the conversation
Right.
tonight. You certainly solicit feedback other ways through, the city website, or I'm sure there's other options, but
Paula, thoughts?
I did pull up my bill, Carly, and you had mentioned there was information on the bill about being able to pay it at other places. It's not on there, so maybe it was at one time and it's not any longer. Do you know? That maybe it
I'll
was
check
just
into
a
that,
snippet
yeah.
that was on the bill for a little bit. There is information about the franchise fee that I pay every month, but there isn't information about being able to pay the bill somewhere else.
Okay, I will check on that.
Okay.
That franchise fee goes to the city, all right.
So Carly, if we were to have an informational meeting, say with the city councilors at a work session, is that something you would be willing to attend, either through
Yeah,
Zoom or in
absolutely.
person?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes, we would absolutely have somebody down there, myself or my colleague Megan Shea, who's been working closely on this as well.
Okay. I'm kind of leaning that direction, but I don't know how you guys feel, that we have a informational session at city council.
That might help people understand a little bit more about what's going on.
Because obviously we don't get the press at this.
No, and people don't typically read the newspaper, so.
So maybe we can push that
I
forward to
want-
Mr. Dalton and see if we can
We can do that.
set that up for a work session. But that would also, I would still want Mr. Scott there too, to know our legal options, because I'm not quite so sure I'm totally there yet. I still think there's been a violation of our lease agreement, and I think there should be some accountability for that. What that is, I don't know yet, but I certainly really appreciate, Carly, that you're here and make me feel a lot better than where I was before this meeting started, or for the last 2 years that we've been talking about this issue. So thank you again for coming into our meeting. Are people okay with that concept or that idea? Let's
Yes,
see, do we need a motion? I mean,
I don't think so.
for that.
It's just continued discussion.
We would probably need a motion then to move this forward to the city
Right.
council work session.
Yeah.
And either one
Yep,
want to
I can make
entertain
the
that?
motion. I'll make the motion to move this forward to a work session with city council.
Okay,
Okay,
second?
I second that motion.
Okay, I think this is a good idea. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries. All right, thank you. We're going to move on to a couple other items. Thank you, Carly. Thank you, Mr. Scott. And we miss it,
Thank you.
before I do that, jump out, anything else that I'm missing from either of you two that you want to make sure you mention?
No, I'll look forward to the dates of that meeting. That's the way the city council.
Yeah, and
decides
typically
about it.
that's the second Tuesday, or it'd be the fourth Tuesday. Third, yeah, what am I thinking?
One of the Tuesdays.
How about the third Tuesday
It's on Tuesday.
in August? More than likely is when that will show up. But
Great.
we'll make sure you're in the know.
Thanks so much.
Yep. thank
Appreciate
you.
your time tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Scott.
all right, thank you,
All right.
members of the committee.
We're going to move back to item 4, new CAD activities. Mr. Sherman.
So before you have our activity reports for April through June. You can see the productions that we worked on and the submitted programs, recordings that we have here in the council chambers. We did have 1 month where we sold $260 worth of DVDs, which is kind of out of the norm. As you can see, every other month is zero. People are buying less DVDs, but we had a program with a lot of, I think it was the ice skating show that
Oh,
we sold a lot of
show?
DVDs for.
the ice.
The ice skating show, they do
Oh,
like
yeah,
a program at the end of their
Figure
season.
skating show.
Any questions about the activity report?
Hearing none, I entertain a motion to approve that report.
I'll make the motion to approve the activities report.
I'll second that motion.
Motion and a second. Any other comments? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to item 4.2, new cap programming update. Mr. Sherman.
All right, so here you can see a little bit more in detail some of the programs that we've been producing, shooting, editing. At the top of the list, we have Don't Forget to Read the Instructions, which is currently now just a partnership with the library since Red Dragon Gaming is no longer, but we've kept it going, and we've done 3 episodes since our last meeting. I think we have 1 more coming too. Tomorrow we're filming 1 more. Living United, which is our talk show program produced by the Brown County United Way. They've done their monthly program. Something Artsy, we've just filmed the August edition today, this morning. And each one of those episodes for Something Artsy usually has about 5 to 7 different interviews with different organizations throughout the community. The forum, we've done 3 episodes since then, and we're working on doing 1 more, highlighting the participants in the Sister Cities program. And then we've done a number of the public library presentations. They've had a lot going on over the summer, so we've done our best to record as many as possible. And we've also been going out to the Brown County Historical Society presentations. We've done 2 of those. CAST has been doing a lot of interesting presentations, so we've done a couple of those. And then we're working on finishing up our 3rd episode of How New Ulm Works, which the first 2 were about the police departments and the public utilities power plants. Now we're venturing out of, directly with the city and, looking at Turner Hall. So we got a tour of Turner Hall, and these programs are about 30 minutes long. We walk through the entire facility. We talk with different employees with the organization, and we see, the different kinds of jobs and how these organizations impact the community. So I'm excited about that one being released. But let's see what's there.
Great. Any questions?
A few more things. The concerts in the park, we've been out to those. State Street Theater, we were able to record their Much Ado About Nothing play, since it's in the public domain. We had the rights to do that. And I'm really happy with the way that looked. I think my staff was able to put together a really great recording of that presentation. And then we have another show related to economic development. So it's something we work on with Heather Briegel, where we highlight different small businesses or new businesses, and we have them come in and talk about starting a business in New Ulm, and then we get some B-roll footage of the inside of their location, and do 3 different businesses per episode. And so we just put out the 2nd volume a few weeks ago. You can see a few of the other programs we were able to get out to. But yeah, any questions about our programming?
You do anything you do the parade for Bavarian Blast, but you do anything else?
Typically just the parade. Sometimes we've gone out and recorded some of the concerts. I just don't have a lot of staff hours to give out right now.
I was going to ask you about that. I know that we're 1 short.
currently we are one short, and Michael Beauvais will be leaving soon
Oh,
as
that's right,
well.
he's a college
So
guy, right?
he accepted a full-time position in the cities, so he'll be leaving soon. So we are looking. We have some interviews next week, so hopefully we'll be able to fill those positions.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, good for you for getting interviews.
Yeah, that's the challenge.
Good candidates?
I think so. So
Good.
excited to meet them and talk with them.
Otherwise, Mike will work more overtime. He doesn't care.
as many as I can get already.
Any questions?
A lot of activity. That's great.
If not, I entertain a motion to approve the program update from April to June 23.
I'll make the motion to approve the programming update for the last 3 months, April to June.
Okay, motion, do we have a second?
I second that.
Motion and a second. Any other questions, comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Lastly, we have number 6, board member comments. Last time I mentioned about, it's budget time. It's time to start preparing the preliminary budget. And I asked about what kind of things are we looking at for 2024? What's going in the budget? Can you give us an update on where you're at?
Yeah. So we'd like to go to NAB next year, and that's a national conference for video professionals in Vegas. We went in 2018, and it was a really great experience. We were able to attend a lot of classes and have an opportunity to look at a lot of the upcoming technology, which we utilized in updating this space here. So I think it's important that we attend
agree.
something like that so we can have an idea of what to recommend in the future, what's out there, what's changing. Other than that, we don't have any other major projects. Looking at maybe updating some things here in the council chambers. People have asked for an extra monitor in the hallway. So when we have overflow, people can still see what's going on in here. So
Right now, there's not. If there's an overflow, they're like sticking their heads in. They're-
So,
Okay,
yeah.
good. That was my only question, fellow board members.
At this point, I don't have any questions.
No, not at this, no, I'm good.
Great, with that, item number 7 is adjournment, so thank you again, welcome Paula. I will call this meeting adjourned. Not too bad.